What happens when one of the most recognizable actresses in the world sits down on a live talk show with a former federal prosecutor who isn't afraid to ask tough questions, and neither of them is willing to back down? Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to Backstory Uncovered and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The studio audience is already excited as Angelina Jolie walks onto the stage. She smiles politely, waving once before taking her seat. The applause is loud, the kind you expect for someone who has been in the public eye for decades. Across the table sits Sunny Hostin, leaning forward slightly with a stack of notes. She greets Angelina warmly. "Angelina, thank you for being here today," Sunny says with a smile. Angelina nods. "Thank you for having me." The audience claps again as the conversation begins. Sunny starts gently. "You've done so much humanitarian work over the years. Refugee advocacy, human rights, working with international organizations. People really respect that." Angelina responds calmly. "That work means a lot to me. It's something I've dedicated a large part of my life to." Sunny nods. "And I think that's why people listen when you speak. But I want to ask you something directly." The audience gets quiet. Sunny continues. "Some critics say celebrities sometimes step into political or legal conversations without fully understanding how complicated those systems are. What's your response to that?" Angelina pauses for a moment before answering. "I think anyone who cares about people has a right to speak about injustice," she says. "You don't have to hold a specific title to care about human rights." The audience applauds. Sunny smiles politely but tilts her head slightly. "I agree that people should care. But as someone who worked as a prosecutor, I also believe there's a difference between passion and expertise." A few people in the audience murmur. Angelina keeps her voice calm. "Of course, I would never claim to be a lawyer." Sunny quickly responds, "But when celebrities speak, millions of people listen. Sometimes they take those opinions as fact." Angelina leans slightly forward. "And sometimes," she replies, "issues get attention only because someone with a platform brings attention to them." The audience reacts with a soft "oh." Sunny nods slowly. "That's true, but it can also oversimplify very complicated legal realities." Angelina doesn't look away. "When you're sitting in refugee camps with families who have lost everything," she says, "the reality already feels complicated enough." The audience applauds again. Sunny taps her notes lightly. "You've advocated for stronger refugee protections in interviews. Some policy experts argue that certain proposals could strain immigration systems." Angelina answers quickly. "Compassion and practicality don't have to compete," she says. Sunny raises a finger slightly. "Sometimes they do, though." The room grows quiet again. Angelina crosses one leg over the other, still composed. "I've worked with governments and policy advisors for years," she explains. "This isn't just a celebrity opinion." Sunny responds immediately. "But you're still approaching it as an activist, not someone who has practiced immigration law." The audience reacts again. Angelina pauses, then nods slightly. "That's fair," she says. "But activism often exists because systems need improvement." Applause breaks out again. Sunny leans back slightly in her chair. "And law exists because systems need structure." For a second, neither of them speaks. The tension is starting to build. Sunny breaks the silence. "Let me ask you something honestly." Angelina nods. "Sure. Do you think celebrity voices sometimes drown out experts who have spent decades studying these issues?" Angelina answers almost immediately. "No," she says. "I think sometimes celebrity voices amplify what experts have been saying for years." The audience claps loudly. Sunny raises her eyebrows. "That's a good argument." But then she adds something that shifts the tone. "However," she continues carefully, "there's also criticism that some celebrity activism can become performative." The audience gasps softly. Angelina's expression changes just slightly. "Performative?" she repeats. Sunny nods. "Some critics argue that public advocacy can sometimes focus more on image than long-term policy solutions." The room becomes noticeably quieter. Angelina leans forward now. "I've spent over 20 years working in refugee camps and conflict zones," she says calmly. "None of that work was done for publicity. The audience erupts in applause. Sunny raises a hand quickly. I'm not saying that's your motivation, she clarifies, but it's part of the public conversation. Angelina keeps her voice steady. Then we should be careful repeating narratives that dismiss real humanitarian work. More applause fills the studio. Sunny nods slowly. And we should also be careful, she responds, about assuming good intentions automatically translate into effective policy. Now the tension in the room is unmistakable. Angelina looks directly at her. Are you questioning my intentions or my impact? The audience reacts with a loud "oh." Sunny holds her gaze. I'm questioning how celebrity influence shapes public understanding, she replies. The room goes quiet again. Angelina takes a breath before speaking. Well, she says calmly, that sounds like a bigger conversation than I expected. Sunny nods. It is, she says, and it's one worth having. The audience sits silently for a moment, sensing that the discussion has just crossed into deeper territory. What started as a routine interview is now turning into something much more intense. And it's clear that neither Angelina Jolie nor Sunny Hostin is planning to step back anytime soon. The audience is still reacting when the conversation picks up again. The energy in the studio has clearly shifted. What started as a respectful interview now feels like a real debate unfolding live. Sunny Hostin leans forward slightly, folding her hands on the table. I appreciate that you're willing to engage in this conversation, she says to Angelina Jolie, because a lot of public figures avoid these kinds of discussions. Angelina nods calmly. I don't think avoiding them helps anyone. The audience claps softly. Sunny continues. Earlier you mentioned that compassion should guide policy decisions. I think most people agree with that. But the legal side of things can be incredibly complicated. Angelina responds without hesitation. Of course it can. Sunny tilts her head slightly. Then do you understand why some policymakers feel frustrated when celebrities criticize them publicly? A few audience members murmur. Angelina answers evenly. Public criticism has always been part of democracy. The audience applauds again. Sunny nods slowly, but keeps pressing. But sometimes those criticisms come without acknowledging the legal limits governments face. Angelina leans forward just slightly. I've worked with governments and international agencies for many years, she says. I'm very aware there are limits. Sunny raises an eyebrow. Yet you still push for major policy changes. Angelina smiles faintly. Because change usually starts with pressure. The audience claps again. Sunny flips one of the pages in her notes. Some critics say celebrity activism can oversimplify global issues. They say it turns complicated legal situations into emotional stories. The room grows quieter. Angelina replies calmly. Stories are how people understand human impact. Sunny responds quickly. But emotion can also drive public opinion faster than facts. Angelina meets her gaze. Emotion is often what forces people to finally look at the facts. The audience reacts with a louder "oh." Sunny pauses for a moment before asking another question. Do you ever worry that your voice might overshadow the people you're advocating for? Angelina actually nods. Yes, she says honestly. And that's why I try to use my platform to amplify their voices, not replace them. Some people in the audience clap. Sunny listens, then leans back slightly. That's fair, she says. But your influence is huge. When you speak, governments sometimes respond. Angelina shrugs lightly. If that helps people who are suffering, then I think it's worth it. More applause follows. Sunny folds her arms on the table. But influence also comes with responsibility, she says. Angelina nods. I agree, Sunny adds. And sometimes responsibility means stepping back and letting experts lead the conversation. The audience murmurs again. Angelina looks at her steadily. Experts should absolutely lead, she says. But that doesn't mean others should stay silent. The audience claps loudly. Sunny gives a small smile. So, you don't believe there's a line that celebrity activism shouldn't cross? Angelina pauses for a moment. I think the line is intention, she says. Sunny tilts her head. What do you mean by that? Angelina answers calmly. If someone is speaking to help people who don't have a platform, that's one thing. If they're speaking for attention, that's something else. The audience reacts with loud applause. Sunny taps her pen lightly on the table. But critics say the public can't always tell the difference. Angelina responds firmly now. That's why the work itself matters. The audience claps again. Sunny looks directly at her. You seem very confident about the impact you've made. Angelina shakes her head slightly. No, she says. I'm confident about the importance of the work. There's a brief silence in the studio. Sunny finally nods. I respect that, she says. But then she adds one more comment that instantly raises the tension again. However, Sunny says carefully, some people still believe celebrity voices carry too much weight in serious policy debates. The audience murmurs. Angelina doesn't look away. Maybe, she replies calmly. But sometimes those voices are the reason the conversation even starts. The audience erupts into applause again. Now the discussion has clearly moved beyond polite disagreement. The tension between Angelina Jolie and Sunny Hostin is becoming more noticeable with every exchange, and the audience can feel that the conversation is far from over. The applause slowly fades, but the tension in the studio doesn't. The audience can feel that the discussion has crossed into something deeper now. Sunny Hostin looks down at her notes for a moment, then back up at Angelina Jolie. I want to shift this just slightly, Sunny says, because I think the bigger question here is about influence. Angelina nods. Okay. Sunny continues. When someone with your level of fame speaks about global policy or humanitarian issues, millions of people listen. That kind of influence is powerful. Angelina responds calmly. It can be. Sunny leans forward a little. But some people would argue that influence like that should come with limits. A few audience members murmur. Angelina tilts her head slightly. Limits on speaking? Sunny clarifies. Limits on shaping public opinion about complicated issues. Angelina pauses before answering. I don't think anyone should control who gets to participate in conversations about human rights, she says. The audience claps. Sunny nods but continues. I'm not talking about control. I'm talking about responsibility. Angelina replies quietly. Responsibility is exactly why I speak. The audience reacts again. Sunny taps her pen lightly on the table. Let me ask you something directly then. Angelina nods. Go ahead. Sunny asks. Do you believe celebrity advocacy sometimes pressures governments into making emotional decisions rather than practical ones? The room becomes very quiet. Angelina thinks for a moment before answering. I think public awareness forces governments to confront problems they might otherwise ignore. Applause spreads through the audience again. Sunny responds quickly. But awareness and policy aren't the same thing. Angelina nods. No, they're not, Sunny adds. And sometimes the public expects immediate action after hearing emotional stories. Angelina answers firmly now. Those stories represent real people. The audience applauds loudly. Sunny raises her hands slightly as the applause fades. No one is denying that. Then she adds something that raises the tension again. But policymakers still have to consider national stability, budgets, infrastructure. Angelina looks directly at her. And people's lives should be part of that calculation. The audience reacts again with claps and murmurs. Sunny takes a breath. I think where we differ, she says, is that I view policy through the lens of law first. Angelina nods slowly. And I view it through the lens of human impact. For a moment, the two women simply look at each other. The audience senses the seriousness of the moment. Sunny breaks the silence. You know, she says, this is probably one of the most direct conversations we've had on this show about celebrity activism. Angelina gives a small smile. Well, it's an important topic. Some audience members laugh lightly. Sunny continues. But I want to be honest. There are people who believe celebrity activism sometimes overshadows experts who have spent their careers studying these issues. Angelina responds calmly. I don't think advocacy replaces experts. Sunny asks, then what does it do? Angelina answers simply. It brings attention. The audience applauds again. Sunny nods slowly. And attention can definitely create momentum, she admits. Then she adds another question. But do you think the attention sometimes focuses more on the celebrity than the cause? A few audience members react with quiet murmurs. Angelina pauses before responding. That risk exists, she admits. Sunny looks slightly surprised by the honesty. Angelina continues, which is why the focus always has to return to the people affected. The audience claps again. Sunny leans back in her chair. I respect that answer, she says. Then she smiles slightly. But I'm still going to challenge you one more time. The audience laughs nervously. Angelina laughs softly too. I figured. Sunny continues. You've spent years advocating for refugee protections and humanitarian aid. But critics say public pressure sometimes creates policies that are difficult to sustain long-term. Angelina listens carefully. Sunny adds. And when those systems struggle later, the same celebrities aren't always there to deal with the consequences. The audience reacts with a louder "oh." Angelina sits forward slightly now. I've stayed involved in this work for more than 20 years, she says calmly. The audience claps again. Sunny nods. And I acknowledge that, she says. But she keeps pushing the discussion. My question is about the broader trend, not just you. Angelina replies. Then the broader trend should be encouraging more people to stay involved long-term. The audience applauds loudly. Sunny smiles. That's a good point. For a moment, the tension eases. But Sunny adds one more comment. Still, she says carefully, some critics argue that celebrity activism can sometimes make governments defensive instead of cooperative. Angelina thinks for a moment. That might happen, she admits. Sunny raises her eyebrows slightly. Angelina continues. But silence hasn't historically solved humanitarian crises either. The audience applauds again. Sunny looks around at the audience reaction and smiles. Well, she says, you're definitely making your case today. Angelina smiles slightly. I didn't come here to argue. The audience laughs. Sunny responds quickly, but you're not backing down either. Angelina shrugs lightly. When the topic is human rights, she says, I usually don't. The audience erupts in loud applause. Sunny nods slowly, clearly recognizing the moment. You know what, she says, I respect that conviction. Angelina nods in return. Thank you. For a moment, the conversation settles into a quieter tone, but everyone in the studio can feel it. This exchange between Angelina Jolie and Sunny Hostin has become one of the most intense moments of the show, and the audience knows the conversation isn't finished yet. The final moments are still ahead, and the reaction after this discussion might be just as big as the debate itself. The applause fills the studio again, but this time it lasts longer. The audience clearly feels the intensity of the conversation that just unfolded. Sunny Hostin sits back slightly in her chair, letting the reaction settle before speaking again. Well, she says with a small smile, I think it's safe to say this turned into a much deeper conversation than we planned. The audience laughs lightly. Across from her, Angelina Jolie nods calmly. Important conversations usually do, Angelina replies. More applause follows. Sunny looks toward the audience. I will say this. I appreciate that you stayed in the discussion and answered every question directly. Angelina smiles politely. I believe discussions like this matter. Sunny nods, even when they get uncomfortable. Angelina responds honestly, especially when they get uncomfortable. The audience reacts with loud applause. Sunny glances briefly toward the cameras. She says, this is exactly why live television can be powerful. People watching at home get to see real conversations, not just prepared statements. Angelina adds, and hopefully those conversations encourage people to think more deeply about the issues. Sunny agrees. I think they will. For a moment, the tone softens. The tension that had been building throughout the interview slowly gives way to mutual respect. Sunny folds her notes. I may challenge you, she says, but I do respect your commitment to humanitarian work. Angelina nods. And I respect your perspective as someone who has worked inside the legal system. The audience applauds again. Sunny smiles. See, we found some common ground. Angelina laughs softly. That's usually how progress happens. The audience claps even louder. As the segment begins to wrap up, Sunny turns slightly toward the audience again. Give it up one more time for Angelina Jolie. The studio erupts in applause. Angelina waves politely and thanks the crowd. But the story doesn't end when the cameras cut. Because within minutes of the segment airing, clips of the exchange between Angelina Jolie and Sunny Hostin begin circulating across social media. Viewers immediately start debating the moment. Some people praise Angelina for standing firm and defending humanitarian advocacy. Others say Sunny asked necessary questions about the role celebrities play in influencing policy discussions. Short video clips from the show begin trending, with viewers posting their own reactions and opinions about the exchange. Some comments read, "Angelina handled that with so much calm." Sunny asked the questions a lot of people were thinking. That's one of the most real debates I've seen on daytime TV. Others focus on the tension itself, pointing out how the conversation slowly shifted from a standard interview into a genuine disagreement. Media commentators begin discussing the moment later that day, calling it one of the most memorable segments of the week. And according to audience members who were inside the studio, the conversation continued briefly even after the cameras stopped rolling. Several people in the audience later said both women spoke respectfully to each other backstage, despite the intense debate on air, which only adds to the conversation happening online, because viewers love moments when live television feels completely unscripted. Moments where two strong voices disagree openly but still remain composed. And that's exactly what happened during this interview. The debate between Angelina Jolie and Sunny Hostin quickly became one of those talk show moments people replay, analyze, and argue about long after the episode ends. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think about this on-air clash? Do you think Angelina Jolie was right to stand her ground? Or do you believe Sunny Hostin raised important questions about celebrity influence? Share your opinion in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Backstory Uncovered for more real talk show stories.